Hello everyone, Palumbo here. Before we start the video, you're innocent until proven guilty. Another video with regards to the case of Madeleine McCann. In front of you here, you have the seating arrangements that Kate McCann drew up with regards to the PJ of where all the group was sitting that night on the Thursday, folks. On this side, in block letters here, capitals, this refers to the pool. This side here refers to the reception. So as you're looking at it now, is the way the table was with regards to the people sitting around that table. Now, Kate McCann is sitting here with the initials me. So she's got a back to the reception and she's got a back to the pool. Reception being here, the pool here, Kate McCann here. Now, Jerry is here, and next to Kate McCann is Fiona, and on this side it says Rachel. Now, according to Jane Tanner, in her statement she made, Jane states that she sat next to Kate. So here you have Kate. So Jane states she was sitting here, folks. Here you have Jane in Kate's drawing, swap around with Russell. So as you can see, they can't even get the seating arrangements correct, folks, from where they were sitting. So I digress. Jane states in her statement that she sat next to Kate McCann on the Thursday evening, folks. So she would be here. On the other side, she states Fiona sat, so that is correct. Fiona's there. Now, the question we're going to ask is the following with regards to Jerry and Kate McCann. So, the timeline, folks, according to the group, goes as follows. Bearing in mind you're looking at Kate McCann's drawing of where they sat on that evening. Matthew Oldfield turns up. Jerry and Kate McCann first arrive at 8:30. Then Jane Tanner arrives. Then Rachel and Matthew arrive. Then Russell arrives. Then Diane Webster, David Payne and Fiona Payne arrive. That's the arrival timeline, folks. Now the checks were supposed to have gone as follows, folks. Matthew went first. He came back. Jerry went second. He stayed away, talked to Jez Wilkins. As he was talking to Jez Wilkins, Jane went away. Jerry came back. Then Jane came back. At 9:30, Matthew Oldfield and Russell O'Brien went away together. Russell stayed away. Matthew came back. Then when Matthew came back, Jane went away to take over from Russell, and then Russell came back. That's supposed to be the chain of events, folks. All the while, Jerry and Kate McCann were supposed to be sitting at the table. Now, bearing in mind what I said earlier regards this video, Jane Tanner, and I'm not going to show you, you have to take my word for it, states in her statement, her interrogatory statement to the detective, that she sat next to Kate McCann. So Kate would be here, Jane would be here. Now I'm going to take you to the statements of Kate and Jerry McCann. Now, this is Kate McCann's first bit of her arguido before it got stopped, folks. Now, let's read it together. Kate McCann tells us the following in her statement. Aside from Matt, she does not remember if anyone else got up from the table, folks. Now, I do not know whether she's referring to the whole night or when Matthew Oldfield went away and come back. But that statement of Kate McCann, if it's referring to the whole night or whether Matthew went or Matthew's check on behalf of Kate, it does not make sense, does it, folks? How can Kate McCann make a statement to the police and tell the police that aside from Matthew Oldfield, she does not remember if anyone else got up from the table, folks? That is impossible when I am telling you that Jane Tanner tells us in her interrogatory statement that she sat next to Kate McCann. If Jane Tanner sat next to Kate McCann would see Jane Tanner getting up from the table to go and do a check, folks, wouldn't she? She would not just recall Matthew Oldfield going away. She would recall Jane Tanner going away. And Russell O'Brien going away, folks. At 9:30, according to Matthew Oldfield, again, I am not going to show you Matthew Oldfield's statement, but at 9:30, he said he stood up along with his friend Russell O'Brien, and he tells the detective in his statement that both he and Russell O'Brien volunteered to go and check on behalf of Kate McCann. At the same time, just before they did so, Jerry McCann pointed out to his wife that it was 9:30 and she needed to go and do a check. So she claims that she stood up also. So she would have stood up, folks, with Matthew Oldfield and Russell O'Brien at that table, the drawing I've just shown you. So she would know that both Russell and Matthew stood up to go and check on behalf of Kate McCann, because that's what they said. Matthew then comes back, folks, and Russell stays behind. But Kate McCann tells us here, aside from Matt, she does not remember if anyone else got up from the table. So she's telling the detectives that she does not recall Russell O'Brien going away with Matthew Oldfield. And again, I am telling you, that's impossible, folks. She's also saying that she could not recall Jane Tanner going to take over from Russell, her partner. Yet I am showing you, or I am telling you, that Jane Tanner said she sat next to Kate McCann at that table. If Jane Tanner is sitting next to Kate McCann at that table, and Jane Tanner does or leaves that table twice, then Kate McCann would recall her leaving the table twice. Once when she's supposed to have done a check, and once when she was supposed to have taken over from her partner, Russell O'Brien. Kate McCann would also recall Matthew Oldfield going away with Russell O'Brien. Why? Because they both volunteered to go and check on behalf of Kate McCann. So why does she make a statement to the police and tell the police that aside from Matthew Oldfield, she does not remember if anyone else got up from the table? That is impossible, folks. Now, you would think to yourself, well, she can't remember. But like I've said, Jane Tanner was supposed to have sat next to her, folks. So there would be an empty seat next to Kate McCann. Now, if you read Jerry McCann's statement, he says the following. Well, just before I go to Jerry McCann's statement, I will show you where Jerry was supposed to be sitting. He was here. So you have Fiona, Jerry's wife Kate, and Jane Tanner, folks, with Russell O'Brien being here. Now the table is not 20 miles round, is it, folks? Let's take you to Jerry McCann and his statement. Now, I've just shown you where Jerry McCann sat with regards to that drawing of the table Kate drew, folks. According to Jerry McCann, he informed his wife, Kate, that it was time for her to go and do a check at 9:30. But she never did that check, supposedly, did she? So Matthew and Russell stand up right in front of Jerry McCann, along with Kate, and Matthew and Russell say to Kate, right in front of Jerry McCann, do you want us to go and check on your children? We'll do it to save you going, Kate. We'll do it to save you going, Jerry, again. This is round the table, folks. So, you would think that Jerry McCann would be aware that along with Matthew Oldfield, Russell O'Brien left the table with him, and then you would assume that Jerry McCann would be aware that Russell stays behind and Matthew comes back himself, and then you would assume that Jerry McCann would be aware that Jane Tanner leaves the table again, bearing in mind that Jane is sitting next to Jerry's wife, to go and take over from Russell O'Brien. But again, you have Jerry McCann, just like his wife, telling the detectives in his statement, after Matthew arrived and before Kate left, he does not recall if anyone else was absent. This time, though, Jerry states it was very probable such a thing had happened. He thinks that on the night, none of the adults nor children were ill. He is asked, he relates that the daughter of Russell and of Fiona would have been ill on Tuesday. Now, I assume the Portuguese police have made a mistake with regards to the daughter of Fiona. I assume they are thinking of Jane. So, Jerry McCann. When Matthew arrives back, folks, having done a check on behalf of Jerry and Kate McCann, Jerry tells the detectives that he cannot recall if anyone else was absent. But Russell was absent, folks, wasn't he? And Jerry McCann, if he was sitting at the table, would recall such a thing, folks. He would recall Russell being absent, and he would recall Russell going with Matthew Oldfield. He would also recall Jane going away, bearing in mind that she's sitting next to Jerry's wife, Kate, to go and take over from Russell. Now I am asking the question, how can both Jerry McCann and Kate McCann make such statements in their statement that they cannot recall if anyone else left the table? Because it would be impossible for them not to recall anyone leaving the table, folks. Especially when you have two people volunteering to check on their children, Russell and Matthew, and especially when another member of the group is sat right next to Jerry McCann's wife, Kate. The only way they would not recall people being away is if they were not at the table themselves to recall people being away, folks. Makes you think.